A man who knows a lot about the Reagan remarks that ring so resolutely all these years later is Craig Shirley. He's the chairman of Shirley and Bannister Public Affairs and the author of 4 books on Ronald Reagan, including Rendezvous with Destiny, Ronald Reagan and the Campaign That Changed America, and he joins us now. Craig, I've watched the Reagan Oval Office farewell speech a couple of times in recent days, and I find it riveting on several levels. It was so optimistic, so poetic, and so prescient about America today. It's really striking. What do you think of this as we look back 30 years now on this incredible speech?
I think you captured it perfectly. I think Ronald Reagan was a romantic. I think it was prescient. I think it was honeyed. But it was also a realistic view of the world, and that's really the way Ronald Reagan saw his own life and the way he saw his presidency. You know, there is a distinct brand of conservatism, which is what you would call Reaganism. Reagan brought an optimistic form of American conservatism to the Republican Party and the national politics that really hadn't been present before. Even Reagan himself had changed. You know, you go back to his speech for Goldwater '64, and you look at it, he's often angry. He's angry at student protesters. He's angry at the Vietnam War. He's angry at Lyndon Johnson's presidency. But by the time of 1980, he's evolved into a fully formed American conservatism who was grounded most definitely in individuality because he was a child of the Enlightenment, but also drenched in optimism. And that's why, you know, he talked about the future all the time. That's why he got such significant support from young people, was because he was always talking about opportunity and the future. And he gave some of his most important speeches on American college campuses.
Craig, in a recent column about the Reagan farewell address, you write that this speech articulated a vision of America, not one defined by borders or barriers, but by philosophy, that America is not a place, but an idea.
Right.
This is different from what we're hearing these days.
Yeah, it is. It was 30 years ago, and it was a different time. Is that, of course, everything of Reagan's presidency, of course, has to be judged in the shadow of the Cold War. Now, there's no doubt about it. By 1988, we were winning the Cold War, whereas 8 years earlier, in 1980, we were losing the Cold War. We'd evicted the Soviets from Afghanistan. We'd evicted them from Grenada. We're on the way to evicting them from Nicaragua and from their ground troops from El Salvador. So we were winning the world debate and winning the ground war. But everything, on immigration, everything, defense policy, spending policy, tax cuts, all was motivated by Reagan's desire to end the Soviet Union, was to win the victory over communism and hopefully do so without firing a shot.
Craig, we all know that Ronald Reagan did not like walls. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. You write that Reagan admired political refugees. Let's take a listen now to another clip from the Reagan speech when he spoke about the carrier Midway on patrol in the South China Sea.
The crew spied on the horizon a leaky little boat, and crammed inside were refugees from Indochina hoping to get to America. The Midway sent a small launch to bring them to the ship in safety. As the refugees made their way through the choppy seas, one spied the sailor on deck and stood up and called out to him. He yelled, "Hello, American sailor. Hello, freedom man."
Craig, this is one speech. It was 20 some odd minutes long, and to listen to that speech again today is just, it gave me chills.
Sure. Well, and me too. And I remember in 1980, because my wife and I both worked for Reagan on the campaigns. We worked at the political operations at the Republican National Committee. We were children of the Reagan Revolution, very deeply involved in the in politics in Washington in the 1980s. And I remember gathering together with some friends from the Reagan administration and politics and the campaigns to watch the farewell speech, and everybody was pretty emotional by the time of it. But that's the effect Reagan had on people. You know, so many of the speeches. I remember being on the floor in Houston at the '92 convention where he gave what was basically his last political speech, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house after he finished there. So, but Reagan knew his effect on people, and he knew that to get people's attention, to get people motivated, he had to reach them on an intellectual level, but also on an emotional level.
Craig, as we wrap up here, what do you think President Reagan would think of the White House today?
I get that question, and I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way to answer it. Reagan was a loyal Republican, and he stuck by some pretty bad Republicans. He stuck by Richard Nixon right till the end, only until the smoking gun came out, revealing that Nixon had orchestrated the cover up of the Watergate break-in. Did Reagan finally break publicly with Richard Nixon? And there were other Republicans who had broken ranks and broken faith that he stuck by. I would think that Reagan would probably be publicly supportive of President Trump, where he could be, and be silent on things that he couldn't abide by. It might be he would speak out very gently about having good manners or decorum in the White House or things like that. But I think Reagan at this point would be probably fairly gentle in his criticism.
Craig Shirley, great to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you.